This is Get Real with King Arthur visit. And thank you all, you wonderful audience, for your kind words and support. So I'll crown myself, and we're going to discuss today, appropriately, the Christmas song, Good King Wenceslas. Now, appropriately, this is the Feast of Stephen Day, December 26th. Now, I know that the talking head this morning said that we ought to take down Christmas decorations after the Christmas dinner. Oh, what happened to the 26 days or the 12 days of Christmas? Anyway, the question is this. Growing up, I loved the Christmas songs, most of them based on either Yule legends or the biblical accounts of the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. But there's a couple songs that didn't fit the categories, including Good King Wenceslas. Now, Good King Wenceslas was a 10th century monarch from Bohemia. And how in the world did what he did on the Feast of Stephen Day sneaked into the Christmas carols? We shall investigate. Now, I will sing just a little bit of it. I can't sing much because I was criticized in college when I sang in the shower, so I'm very sensitive. But anyway, you'll remember it goes like this. Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, thick and crisp and even. On it goes, you remember it. Now, the song goes on to say that, it goes on to say, Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, thick and crisp and even. Brightly shone the moon that night, when the frost was cruel, when he saw a poor man gathering winter fuel. And another verse goes, Sire, the night is darker now, and the wind's more stronger. Sire, my heart, I know not how I can go no longer. Mark my footsteps, good my page, and you go plant my feet in my imprint as we go, and thou shalt feel the wind and storm less stronger. Then he says, bring me flesh and bring me wine. Bring me pine logs hither. Thou and I shall see him dine when we bring him thither. And then he said, forth they went, page and monarch together, and survived the bitter weather. Well, great song. So all through my life, I wonder, why in the world are we singing about this 10th century monarch in Bohemia? What has that got to do with Christmas? And so we stumble on a linguistic principle of metaphor and metonymy. Now, in previous sessions, we looked a bit on metaphor, and all abstract concepts, especially religious concepts, use metaphor. For example, we talk about Jesus as the door, we talk about and government the ship of state? It was a metaphor, and it's hard to talk about philosophy or religion without metaphor. Metaphor is talking about a subject with two unlike things. For example, the nation is not a ship, so we talk about the nation as the ship of state. That's metaphor, two unlike things. Now, metonymy is two associated things, like things. So, metaphor, two unlike things. Metonymy, two associated things. And when we look at what you say or what you read or what you write, you create a skeleton, more about that later, and then you hang on that skeleton, metaphor and metonymy. So we want to look at metonymy right now. Why are we singing Good King Wenceslas after Christmas or while Christmas in the Christmas season? Well, of course, it is the Feast of Stephen Day. And so the song is about the Feast of Stephen. And notice these things associated with Christmas, which is in the winter. Now, we already know that it probably was spring, but the metaphor has the picture of, winter time. And so, obviously, the Feast of Stephen is wintertime. And Christmas, for us Northern Hemisphere people, is winter. I grew up in upstate New York, and we had winter. I recall getting stuck on a country road at night, and we couldn't move the car. And we had to knock on a house we saw in the distance to stay the night. And I knew the bitter weather of winter. And winter then is associated with Christmas. Well, my brother Herb, when it rained on Christmas Eve, he was most upset. Well, fortunately, Christmas Day, it snowed. So one of the reasons we sing Good King Wenceslas at the Christmas season, it's about cold weather, the winter weather, and going forth in the winter, the wild weather, and the pitying of anyone who's outdoors as the king sees the old man. So it's wintertime. Another analogy is that Christmas has to do with helping those who are weaker or younger than you are. So we think of St. Nicholas, we talked about that metaphor, and giving, based on an actual event of St. Nicholas, giving toys to children as presents to children. And so this is giving presents to an old guy. This old guy gathering winter fuel in the middle of winter. So that's another similarity. A third similarity is that Christmas has to do with feasting, Christmas dinner. And at Christmas dinner, you often get invited out. You invite friends. And organizations like the Salvation Army, bless their hearts, have Christmas dinners for homeless. So we have a king inviting an old man gathering fuel with his queen, obviously, and eating with him. Page and monarch and wife sat down to Christmas dinner. So all three of those things are analogous part of Christmas. It's sort of a bond between those two things, King Wenceslas in the 10th century and our celebration of Christmas. Now, somewhat similar is O Tannenbaum, or Old Christmas Tree. Although greenery, we look at why we're celebrating a Christmas tree, because Christmas and Yule customs are engaged in bringing green into the party, deck the halls with boughs of holly, the holly and the ivy, you bring them in. So the decorations at Christmas time and a Christmas tree are analogous. Now, when you come into my condominium in San Diego, I will talk about some analogous things I have in my condo. For example, on my kitchen counter is a glass cruet. I think that's the word. That cruet was my grandmother's, and it's beautifully cut glass. And I grew up, whenever I visited my grandparents, looking at the cruet. It was always on the table. So it is associated with my grandmother and my growing up. So I have this, association is there. And then I have books, all kinds of books. I have to have books around because they are analogous, related to literature, which I love. And then on my wall, I have a life mask of John Keats, one of my favorite poets. And John Keats appeared in a great painting that the painter Benjamin Haydon made called Christ's Triumphant Entry into Jerusalem. And he put Keats and Wordsworth in the painting. And to help his painting, he had Keats put a life mask on, and this is a copy. So I have the cruet on the table. I have books all over. I have the life mask of John Keats, all related to things that I treasure and I value. Now, some people like a condominium or a house all minimal. They don't like clutter, but I love clutter because they're metronomical, if I can use that word. They remind me of things that are important to me in the past. There's an association. Now, one of the associations we have is we talk about the White House as why do we talk about the executive branch of our government as the White House? Well, because the president lives in the White House and many executive offices are in the White House. And rather than saying the administration made this pronouncement, we say the White House came out with this speech or this policy. And so things that are associated with important things. Part to the whole is another way, something that's part of something else. I have good Canadian friends. Had Carol and Harley By. I went to college with them. They married each other. And unfortunately, Harley died a couple of years ago. And Carol is going to be buried beside him in Owen Sound, Canada. But she grew up in New England. And she wants to be buried next to her wonderful husband. But she wants to have some tie with where she grew up in New England. So buried next to Harley and her is a slab of granite from Vermont. So it's associated with something that's valuable. And doesn't St. Paul say, whatever things are true, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, think on these things. Have things that remind you of good things in the past. What do you have that you grew up with? one of my colleagues has a daughter, and when she was about 3 years old, she gave me a little bunny, ceramic bunny, and painted it. And I put it in my office. Well, because it's associated with this nice little girl, Sarah. So surround yourself, I think, with metonymy, in other words, things that remind you, are associated with the past, sometimes a part of the whole. Now, my sister Donna loved growing up at our house in Ilion, New York. And when Mother died and the house was sold, my sisters said, I want part of that house in my house. So she went to North Street to the house and got the little buzzer and got permission from the owner to take the buzzer out of the door. And she's got it in her house now. And this little buzzer reminds her of growing up in that house. So things that are associated with things that are of value and remind you, I recommend. And so when you're talking about Christmas, well, let's talk about the Feast of Stephen, and let's talk about snow and bitter weather, and let's talk about helping people who need help and whatnot. Oh, good King Wenceslas, he was something else. He died when he was 28, and in the song they even call him a saint. What kind of king was that? That before the Christmas feast, well, at the day after, actually, he saw this poor man gathering field and went out to help him. So metaphor, comparison of two unlike things. And metonymy, a comparison of talking about one thing and it's because it's associated with something else. That's how you develop. You put flesh on the skeleton of what you're going to say. You have the skeleton. We'll talk about that later. And how do you develop it out? Well, you add metaphor and you add metonymy. I had a friend, had a little boy. It was, he called me Uncle Art. And when he went to kindergarten, we said, "What did you do today, Craig?" He said, "Color pictures." Okay. Second day, he said, "Well, Craig, what did you do today?" "Colored pictures." Well, about the fifth day, we got a little worried about what was going on in school. But he didn't bring out all the things associated with what he'd done at school. You know the book, Where Did You Go Out? What did you do? Nothing. Well, to use some old metonymy and little things that are associated with the fun you had. So, happy Feast of St. Stephen Day, and may you surround yourself with objects which remind you of all the wonderful experiences you've had in associations of the past. Okie doke. See you next week.